The Campbell County Jane Doe, identified as Tana Marie McKenney Farmer. Tina's family last saw her on Thanksgiving Day in 1984 in Indianapolis, Indiana. At this time, she left behind a young daughter. There's some suggestions that she went hitchhiking. Not a lot has been released so far about Tana's life, and there's no indication why she left, especially right at the holidays. Tana would then be found on January 1st, 1985, off Interstate 75 near Jellicoe in Campbell County, only about 300 miles away from home. Someone had bound, strangled, and abandoned her off the side of the road. Around this time, investigators noticed a number of red-haired women were being found in similar conditions off highways throughout Tennessee and Kentucky. It spanned around 2 years. It's often referred to as the redhead murders. 2 of the 5 women with red hair that were found are still unidentified Jane Does. It appeared someone was preying on women who were at risk, especially runaways and hitchhikers who resorted to prostitution to be able to survive. In this case, it was Tana's daughter who did her best to find her mom. She contacted Campbell County to tell them that she believed the Campbell County Jane Doe in Lafayette, Tennessee was her mother. Tana's daughter submitted her DNA and began to wait. It was at this time they pulled a fingerprint off a necklace that was found with her body. They had it the entire time. They were able to compare the fingerprint to a past arrest and confirm that it belonged to Tana Farmer. It appears her daughter passed away in the middle of all this being discovered. We know that she passed away in 2017. It's unclear if she officially found her mother first. Hopefully she did. The thing that makes me angry about this case is that they had the fingerprint the whole time. In the case of Tana, her perpetrator left behind his DNA on a blanket, and it was processed in 2016. It would take until December 2019 before they announced Tana's case was closed. They were able to match her assailant's DNA to a man named Jerry Leon Johns. Unfortunately, he escaped paying for his crime, because Johns passed away in prison in 2015. This seems incredibly cruel, given they had his DNA on the blanket, and his DNA was already in CODIS. So much like the fingerprint, they had all of the answers and they didn't find them. It appears that for whatever reason, they didn't bother to run the DNA through CODIS. There's some indication that they declined to do any of this because they didn't have her identity yet. Personally, I find no justification in refusing to process DNA until the Doe's identity is found. This isn't the first one we've run on this channel, where DNA appeared linked to multiple other leads that the police wouldn't follow because the decedent was unnamed. I try not to be judgmental, but it makes me a little nauseous to think all the pieces were right there. They had a fingerprint and DNA, and nothing was done. The Campbell County Sheriff, in my opinion, completely dropped the ball on this one. As for the owner of that DNA, Jerry Leon Johns was convicted in 1987 of aggravated kidnapping and assault on another woman he picked up hitchhiking in Knox County, Tennessee. This was just 2 months after Tana disappeared. Fortunately, in this case, the woman survived the attack. He did all of the same things to her, but thankfully, he didn't check to see if she was still breathing, and she was. Her testimony assisted in putting Johns behind bars. Thankfully, he was stopped from hurting anyone else. Tana Marie McKenney Farmer went unidentified for 33 years. Mountain Jane Doe, identified as Sonja Blair-Adams. In 1969, a man was picking flowers along rural Kentucky Road near Letcher, Kentucky. Instead of flowers, he found Sonja laying off the side of the road. But who she was would remain a mystery. They knew that she'd been stabbed and that she was around 20. The locals very much cared for this young woman, even though they didn't know her name. It would take 25 years to get that name. Sonja disappeared from Harlan, Kentucky. One of the touching things about the Doe cases is how many people care. It's why people listen and watch on YouTube. It's why in many jurisdictions the police keep coming back to the case. One of the policemen commented that she was someone's child, and it was so important to give her identity back. In this case, it was a daughter wanting to find her mother, and the Mountain Doe's NamUs profile that had been made by the Kentucky State Police that were the key. For those unfamiliar, NamUs stands for the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System. It runs a database where relatives can enter their DNA in search of a loved one. In 2009, a then 41-year-old Karen Stipes found herself searching the NamUs database, in hopes of locating what happened to her mother. It was there that Karen discovered the entry of Mountain Jane Doe, and with the help of her children, she reached out to detectives. Unfortunately, this case wasn't one where the DNA was already in the system. For some reason, it took 6 more years, but they got her exhumed and processed. It would be 2015 before her remains were sent to the University of North Texas to compare the DNA with her daughter. Thankfully, Sonja's identity was restored, and the daughter finally knew what happened to her mom. Sonja was only 21 when her life was taken. When Sonja disappeared, Karen was just a baby. There's no information about what happened to the father, but we know that she grew up with her paternal grandmother. It appears she had no contact with her mother's family, and as a result, she grew up without any pictures of her mother or any knowledge of what happened to her. She held the kind of dreams that many kids do in that situation. Dreams of what her mother looked like, the kind of person she was, and more importantly, of them coming together. Karen was just 10 years old when she overheard someone say that her mother was killed on Little Shepherd's Trail. Although nothing I could find identified who the family member was who made the statement or if she even remembered. She said she was ordered not to talk about it or look into it any further. This takes on a whole new level of sinister. However, as it would turn out, it was also true. The Mountain Jane Doe was found off that trail. Without the aid of the internet, however, it was difficult to search. Karen held on to this rumor and kept trying to find the truth. She found the birth and marriage certificates for both her mother and father, but a death certificate was missing. In 2009, she and her children were investigating on the internet again, and it was that year Kentucky police entered the Mountain Jane Doe into the database. Her family managed to find the case itself, and everything seemed to match up. The police took their DNA, but time dragged out. It went from 2009 till 2014 before they even exhumed her body. And when they finally did this, it would turn out the body that they exhumed wasn't even Sonja. The person they exhumed turned out to be male. The marker for the grave indicated it was Sonja, but there was a different John Doe buried inside. It would take another year before they found the correct grave and sent her to the University of North Texas for DNA. It's baffling how disorganized so many of these burials are. This is not even the first John or Jane Doe in the wrong grave. Sonja's daughter eventually met some of her mother's siblings, and thankfully they were able to give her some photographs of her mother. In 2015, they finally discovered where her mother's body was buried and were able to exhume it. In 2016, it was confirmed that Sonja Blair-Adams was in fact the Jane Doe. Sonja's daughter said she was glad she was able to find her mother, but that she wishes her mother had abandoned her and was still alive. It was a better option, and it's a bittersweet discovery to discover that her mom passed away all those years before. The police say they are looking for whoever took her life, but so far they have no suspects. There's no information as to who was discussing her mother's death or what happened to her father. It seems odd to me that someone knew where she was and discussed it, and yet that didn't lead to a person of interest. But the cases I'm covering right now are a little bit older, and nothing has happened since 2016 that's been reported on. The police also seem to have bungled the entire thing. The investigation was terrible, and there weren't even any pictures taken of the crime scene. Police say they are still interviewing suspects, but 5 years has passed since the identification, and no arrests have been made. Sonja Blair-Adams went unidentified for 47 years. She was found 44 miles away from where she went missing. If she had been allowed to live, she would have 2 great-grandchildren today. The Pinellas John Doe, October 10, 1980. Early in October, a young man's body was found in Tampa Bay near the Sunshine Skyway Bridge in Pinellas County, Florida. He appeared to be in his mid-teens to mid-20s and around 5'5". He likely weighed around 125 pounds and had curly hair that was light brown in color. He had some facial stubble, perhaps a day or two's growth. Little else is known other than he wore a size 30 underwear. If the estimate regarding his age is correct, he was born around 1955 to 1965. The Pinellas County John Doe has gone unidentified for 41 years.
Thanks everyone for watching and listening. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button. We have new episodes every Monday and Thursday. And don't forget, life can change on a dime. So take care of yourselves and each other.